My absolute favorite contest to watch is the Copa Libertadores in South America, bringing together all of the best clubs across the continent and having them face off to decide which club is the best. It is the Champions League of South America, for those that need a translation or a comparison on that. I have covered this contest twice already on the channel due to a shift in the COVID schedule from 22 to 23. And so even though we're only a 2-year-old channel here, we are now on our third Copa Libertadores story, and I hope you guys find this as interesting as I do. And if you do have any interest in South American futsal, the women's Copa Libertadores is happening right now on their YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out as the group stage wraps up and we get into the knockouts of a semifinal and final. I hope to find a way to stream some watch parties for this depending on schedule, but I could not find what the playoff schedule looks like for them in my search. But to be fair, it was a brief one, and I kind of just had to give it up due to some other time constraints. But let's talk about what's already happened back in May, and that's the men's action. For those of you that are unfamiliar, the best teams from each country, as well as an additional host country and the champions, participate across 3 groups. These 3 groups will decide a quarterfinal, which means that not only will the top 2 teams from each group make it through, but the 2 best third-place teams will also make it through. Let's talk about the teams that participated this year, starting in, I guess, alphabetical order of country in Argentina, where we saw San Lorenzo. Hey, hello, my favorite team. If you've been paying attention to the channel, we'll talk a little more about some heartbreak on that for me later. And then Barracas Central was the second team that made it through. Argentina, as hosts, did get 2 representatives within this contest. Brazil, next up, also had 2 representatives within the Copa Libertadores, defending champions Cascavel, as well as MAGNUS Futsal, who has been a absolute powerhouse for years. They have a massive sponsor, a lot of funding behind them, and they had a couple down years where they didn't quite make it and had a couple upsets that kept them out of some playoffs, but they are back in action and were really strong in this contest. More to come there. Bolivia, we saw Fantasmas return to try and get a little better result than they did last year. Not exactly the most impressive matchup for them last year, but some pretty impressive jerseys, which kits that Luke and I both really enjoyed. So that's always a part of it for us on the channel for a little fun, lighthearted fun, is talking about the kits of these teams and who has the best one. Chile saw Santiago Wanderers show up and take on the contest. We also saw from Colombia, Independiente Barranquilla, who I hope I said right, but man, that was a very exciting squad to watch, which was really refreshing for me to see someone other than the 2 big countries making a stir. SS Boca returned for Ecuador to represent their country as the best club, returning there. Cerro Porteño, another returning team that is coming in from Paraguay. And then from Peru, we saw Pantalón, who is a regular at this contest as well, constantly cleaning up in the Peruvian league and has a really exciting high-flying squad that tends to do well on these big stages. Peñarol, again, back for Uruguay, and it seems like they're just steamrolling the league there, but very interesting stuff coming from them as they showed up again. They found a way to shake things up every single contest that I've watched, and it was no different this season. And then Centauros from Venezuela returned, finishing 3rd place in their own stadium last year, looking to make a similar stir this year. And let's get into some of those results now. Let's start with Group A. Group A saw Barracas, Cascavel, Centauros, and Cerro Porteño take each other on. Now, the Paraguayan side, Cerro Porteño, typically is a given to get into the knockout stage, but they had a really tough go in this tournament and did not come out with any points. Centauros had really tough competition amongst all these teams, but was able to pull that 3 points from their match against the Paraguay squad and actually were able to make it through as one of the best 3rd place teams. So we saw 3 teams advance from this group. Barracas Central and Cascavel tying for 1st and 2nd, and then Centauros coming through as the best 3rd place team with 3 points themselves. Then we look at Group B. Group B had the team that, of course, I was cheering for, San Lorenzo, Pantalón, and then, of course, Barranquilla from Colombia, and then Fantasmas from Bolivia all facing off against each other. A similar story at the bottom of this table as Phantasmas, again, unfortunately comes up with very little results in this tournament. But another best third place squad is coming out of Group B, and that is Independiente Barranquilla, as they were able to come up with 3 points in this contest and sneak in past Santiago Wanderers from Group C on goal differential, and they made a lot of noise with that opportunity of getting that third place spot. I can't wait to tell you guys about that. San Lorenzo coming in second place. They lost to Pantalone on the last day of the group stage. It was not anything to fear, as they were a locked qualified team. That said, form is super important in these kind of contests. San Lorenzo never looking particularly dominant throughout this contest like they did when they won in 2021, but they, of course, looking to come back and repeat from their results from that year and see if they can make something big happen. Pantalone goes undefeated in the group, one of only 2 undefeated teams in the group stage. Speaking of undefeated teams, we look at Group C. Magnus was undefeated. They were extremely confident and looked so convincing through the entire group stage. They really just breezed through with 9 points. Peñarol, who in the last 2 contests kind of snuck in on the last day with some last minute points to get a third place slot, found themselves in second this year, edging out Santiago after a dicey match with Boca. SS Boca, unfortunately, at the bottom of this table, another team that kind of underperformed compared to usual. And then Santiago Wanderers, as I said, unfortunately with a little bit of heartbreak, as they just missed the cut to get that third place match. Quarterfinals getting set up became very interesting. We saw, first off, where my team's journey ended, San Lorenzo. They faced off against Peñarol and never looked particularly convincing in that match, and ultimately lost 3-0. They seemed to be chasing the match most of the time, even though when they did have the ball, they seemed to have great control and great poise. They just never seemed to really get that luck in the final bit to get those goals and make it happen. Now, if you guys don't know, one of the things about Copa Libertadores that they do is they do continue matches outside of these quarterfinals to place everyone in an individual place. So everyone moves on into some playoff matches. And San Lorenzo, even though they lost, would continue on to face other teams in the losing bracket, but never really looked particularly convincing until they beat Phantasmas at the end of that journey. I really didn't follow those matches and won't cover them here on the channel, as they really aren't important in the grand scheme of things to what you guys want to hear about, and that's the winners. But speaking of winners, we look to the next match, which is Barracas and Centauros, which was a very close match. Centauros looking to find that magic of getting to the podium from last year, unfortunately could not duplicate against a Barracas Central side that looked very solid throughout the tournament, and they win 2-1. Then we take a look at a match that absolutely blew my mind on the quarterfinal day, and that is Pantalone facing off against Independiente Barranquilla, who came from behind in this match and managed to tie it in the last couple minutes of the game. They went into extra time and found the winner to beat and upset Pantalone, a massive underdog story that happened in this quarterfinal. And man, what an amazing sight to see. The game was absolutely mind-blowing. I was trying to watch it in the background during my workday, and I could not help but be distracted and watch most of this match. Hopefully my boss doesn't see this. But at the end of the day, it was a really great match, a ton of great futsal, really gritty and really exciting, and it set a stage for what could be in semifinals and really put everyone on blast that no one is safe in a contest like this, regardless of whether they look like underdogs on paper or not. Then we take a look at the other quarterfinal match on this side of the bracket, and that was the 2 Brazilian giants facing off against each other, and they did not disappoint. This match ending in Magnus's favor, 3-2. Cascavel would not be able to three-peat after 2 championships in a row. They would not make it past their countrymen as rivals. But man, this match, guys, was finals worthy. It could have very easily been presented to you, and you would have thought that it was the final match of the tournament to be champions. The level of play was on a whole nother level from everyone else. It was very entertaining, very back and forth, very well balanced, and it did not disappoint, as the Brazilian clubs rarely do. Now, let's talk about those semifinals. We see Barracas facing off against Peñarol. And then we see Barranquilla with a massive mountain to climb as they had to face MAGNUS. But man, Barracas was able to handle Peñarol. They scored 5 goals against Peñarol's 2 and knocked them out. Again, Peñarol comes up a little bit short. They were finalists just 2 seasons ago in this contest, but have not quite been able to find their way back into those finals or last day matches quite the way they did before, and are kind of looking strong, but often overlooked because of the big teams that participate in this, the big countries that really advertise and showcase their futsal in South America. And then speaking of, we saw MAGNUS absolutely dismantle Barranquilla, and their Cinderella story came to an end in the semifinal, a 5-0 shutout, which saw MAGNUS find their way to the final. I don't think from watching this contest that anyone could be surprised about that. Barracas, as I said, has looked consistent from the group stage, so surely a believable storyline there to see these two face off in the final. Peñarol would find some hardware with winning their 3rd place match on the final day. They won a 3-1 thriller against Barranquilla, who were very valiant in their effort to try and make it to the podium. They came just up short. But man, I sure do hope they can keep this momentum going through their next regular season and we get to see them again at this contest. Who knows what the future holds for a club like this out of a country that in the past, their representatives have not done well and have not been particularly earth-shattering in the way of changing the stigma of who the winners are in these contests. So exciting to see a fresh country on the podium compared to the last couple seasons. Peñarol finding their way into a win for 3rd place. Congratulations to them. Then we got to talk about that final. Now, the scoreline of this thing is a 2-goal victory for MAGNUS in the form of a 4-2 win. Barracas, though, did look very solid in this match the whole way through. They just could not quite match that intense high level that MAGNUS had played at the entire contest. They just never let off the gas from the day they arrived, the day they left with the trophy. They were by far the top class best team in this contest. Congratulations to them as they make it through. Really interesting to see that for a similar storyline out of South America continues as Brazilian sides continue to dominate these contests. Brazil, of course, with a ton of players and talent that come out of their country in all forms of soccer and all practices. We see a lot of Brazilians come to the United States to play in arena soccer. And then we also see them play all over the world in top capacities. They are everywhere playing futsal and playing soccer. So it's not surprising in a lot of ways, but what do these other countries have to do to catch up to Brazil and knock them off that podium? In the entire history of the Copa Libertadores, a Brazilian side has only lost that championship match on 2 occasions, and they've never not been in the final. So there is an amazing, amazing track record here for the Brazilian squads. Their level of competition across their entire league is just so high. They always come in super sharp. Whereas some of these other leagues I see, and the little bit I get to watch, I've noticed that, a lot of times in these other countries, particular smaller ones, there typically is a lead horse team that just steamrolls everybody else. They really don't get tested. We see that in the UEFA preliminary rounds quite often, that a team that is absolutely dominating in their country really isn't at a level of the rest of the world when it really comes down to brass tacks. So it seems to be a similar problem here in this continent as well. I'm curious what you guys think about that. Other than Cerro Porteño and San Lorenzo, every other team that's ever won has been a Brazilian side. I absolutely love the Brazilian flair of these teams and the absolute class that they perform at. But I would love to see some other teams shake it up for the health of the sport and kind of level that playing field and see where we get to next. Now, the exciting thing too, like I said, is the female version of this contest is happening right now as I post this video. Again, Brazilian sides have dominated that contest. They have never lost at the Copa Libertadores Feminina. Every Brazilian delegate has always made it to the final and won in convincing fashion. And Stein FC, who is also based out of Cascavel, is looking to repeat as champions. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, and a story will be coming on that soon. What do you guys think about South American futsal? I love their passionate fans. I'm wondering if you're one of them. And until I hear from you in the comments about what you thought about this contest, don't forget to play with your soul.